Hello there, JerganJaze. Today I am using this video as a way to convince you why you should be judging your book covers. There's obviously the phrase you should not judge a book by its cover, but I think quite literally for books themselves, you should actually be judging them by their cover. So for me, also with me being an artist, it's something that I really appeal to, where I'm really detracted by what I would consider bad art or bad cover art. But I find it really appealing when it actually has good art, and here's why. If the editor, and you've probably heard this argument before, editor, marketing team, the artist, or whatever, hasn't actually taken the time to make something that looks good and actually conveys the tone and everything to the proper audience that it needs to, then why would the rest of the team, the publishers, editor, whatever, author, have also taken the time to make something of good quality? Now, this isn't always the case as such by the phrase, but more often than not, in my experience, I have found that I am more ready to buy a book that has a good cover, and it helps me in a way pick it back up every time, even when I'm at a slow point in it and I need to keep on going. Having something nice to look at really helps me pick it back up. So I keep on waving around Way of Shadows by Brent Weeks just because it is something that I think has a really nice cover art. If there's some new ones that Orbit is pushing out that I actually like a little bit better. It's a little bit more stylized and is kind of the look that I like. But this is one of my favorite series of all time, and it's a series that also has cover art on it that is telling you it's assassins fantasy. Obviously, it's a pretty cliche cover, but it's still one that I think stands out, and I really like it. So you also have good series that I've encountered that I didn't quite get into until later on because their covers were a little bit lacking, in my opinion. So for one of these is Wheel of Time, which I'm currently reading through, and I'm on Crossroads of Twilight, which is book 10 of the 14 book series, 15 if you count the prologue, but I just chose Lord of Chaos because that's my favorite of them so far. Also happens to be the longest. But this is a series that, especially if you've seen like the old original prints for it, which hopefully if I'm not lazy I'll have right here, you'll see those were the original ones that I was familiar with and had really turned me away from buying them because I wasn't really on the internet. I didn't know about booktube or BookTok or anything that had to do with that. So I was very much on my own when it came to finding reading material for a really long time, until I started getting back into reading again and actually looking up stuff. But anyways, it was one that really put me off for a long time, yet this series, I know, can be controversial or whatever, but I'm loving it, and I'm wondering if it had just had better cover art, if it would. Now, what I'm holding right now is the mass market paperbacks. I wouldn't really recommend getting these. All of them look exactly, if it'll focus, sorry about the sheen on that, but all of these have the same exact like Wheel of Time serpent symbol on top of it. It goes for all 15 of them, at least for this release. Now you have the original one that actually, was different throughout, but I really didn't like the styling of it. Had a very old 80s kind of outdated look. Granted, the series started coming out in the 90s, but it still really put me off. And it's not bad art, it's just bad art for marketing, if that makes sense, at least in my opinion. Granted, you could completely disagree with me, that's fine. But then you have the newer, which I don't have any, but I really want them, the newer trade paperbacks of these, that the illustrations that are put on them are really nice, yet they all have a pattern that they follow through, so you know that they're all connected in the series. Hopefully I put that up as well over here. So you have that, but Barbara Jordan is modern classic of fantasy right up there next to Tolkien, or right below it. I wouldn't say next to, not quite, but. And then you have other authors like Brandon Sanderson, whose covers I really don't like, and I don't think I would ever have started reading Sanderson if it hadn't been for the fact that when I read Mistborn for the first time, I did it as an audiobook. And even Mistborn, I really like the older prints of it, the one that I have here, as opposed to the new ones. It's very much reminiscent of the Robert Jordan styling of things with his original prints, and Sanderson takes a lot of influence from Jordan, so it makes sense that a lot of his stuff models it, and a lot of his target audience is the same target audience that Jordan has, since he finished the Wheel of Time, or helped finish Wheel of Time. So that completely makes sense. Then there's also, on the reverse side, as well as things that have really held me back from reading them for a while, but you have polar opposite of that. You have books that have phenomenal art that I bought just because of the art, and they look nice on my bookshelves. As well as this bookshelf, I have another one that's off to the wall, and the one up here. If you've watched my book tour video, you'll know that. But anyways, so for one of these is Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler, and the second one is actually coming out pretty soon. I've not even read this first one. A lot of stuff on my shelf isn't read, and I'm trying to fix that. I'm sorry. But I couldn't tell you what it was. I know I read the premise after picking it up, but look at that. It's really good. It's a really good illustration. It also has, I'm mostly interested in illustration and concept art, so this is just like a very high definition illustration sort of thing, so it's really appealing to me, but I think it's just a standout cover to begin with. And then you also have, say, Priory of the Orange Tree, which way before it even got popular on TikTok or anything, I had actually bought it to read for myself. I still haven't bought it. I've read the first several chapters, and it got away from me. Fully plan on reading this, but it had originally brought me to it because it has such a stunning title. And then same with Age of Ash. I literally bought this just so that it would be on my bookshelf. It by Daniel Abraham, so he's the co-author of James A. Corey for the Expanse series, which I've heard great things about. I obviously own Leviathan Wakes, the first one. I have the 10-year anniversary thing of it. But anyways, Age of Ash I mostly bought just because of the cover, and it also had a really good recommendation from Joe Abercrombie, and I really like his stuff. So I bought this just because of the art for it. And there's a lot of other series that I have started buying just because of the art, or the whole, I feel like, appeal of, say, manga, for instance, with it is that the art is the whole thing through, and you also have cover art for it as well. But something that's so nice and appealing is that because it is so art focused, it's really easy to sell. And I work at a bookstore too. We sell a lot of this stuff, and it really picked up popularity a few years ago for a lot younger audience too that wasn't quite into it before. But it sells really well because it has really nice cover art, I feel like. I mean, the other stuff too, and it being a graphic novel and all that, but the art being good is what helps carry the viewer. You're a viewer, they aren't viewers. Helps carry that person through the story, whereas this, we have the art to rely on for the cover, and that's really it, unless we get illustrations and stuff in it. So with that, I hope I've convinced you a little bit of why cover art is so important, and maybe why you should be judging books by their covers.